Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Tell Me More, where we are trying to create better conversations in healthcare. This is an episode that's going to sort of straddle both of my types of episodes. So we love to talk to patients about their experiences in healthcare conversations, but I also love to talk about the business of medicine, because without successful, thriving medical practices, healthcare suffers and patient outcomes suffers. So my guest today is an expert in both areas and so interesting. I'm just thrilled to have him on the show. Chuck Rinker, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you much for having me.
So just to bring our listeners up to speed, Chuck, you're the CEO of PRSONAS, a digital staffing company. Basically, you focus on using AI to improve staffing across many different sectors, right? And your background was in gaming, so you're very familiar in, human experience and engagement, right?
Correct.
And boy, do we need that in healthcare. So you've started this company, iHealth Assist, to incorporate some artificial intelligence technology and avatar into the healthcare experience with the hopes of improving it for patients first, but also improving it for those of us healthcare providers who are struggling with staffing and just being everywhere every time, which is impossible. And you've also been a patient. So take me through your journey. How did you end up with iHealth Assist through your own personal experience?
Great question, and I'll try to keep it brief because it's a long one coming. Because I was actually raised a cattle farmer in Virginia, of all things. So
wow.
I went from cattle farming to human AI. But let's just say where it started all was around the human engagement factor. As you mentioned, I do have a background in gaming. I was into a lot of simulation and training in some younger years around the DC area. And when I got into gaming, the one thing I learned about gaming was the power of engagement. And that engagement can be in the form of, you hate to use the word addicted when you're talking about a healthcare podcast, but the younger generation and even the mid generation that I grew up with really became pretty addicted to gaming. And so it kind of, spending a career in there and doing the likes of NCAA college football, I directed that in the Madden series. You were just enticing tens of thousands to almost millions of players to put a level of commitment into their gaming experiences. And a lot of that was through the personal engagement, the human engagement. What is that engagement component? And people think AI is so new. We've been doing AI when you have 22 football players running around the field, and some of them are passing, some of them are running, some of them are blocking. Every single one of those has their own basic AI. Now it's advanced enough that we now have taken AI to the level of making it more able to communicate with humans. And that's where you had alluded to something that I will say is our number one response I have to always address. Is the whole, ooh, AI is scary, AI is going to take people away. And I kind of jokingly say, chat GPT and voice to text and all this natural language parsing and everything you see that makes these digital humans so almost creepy is really nothing more than a productivity tool that has eyes and ears. What if your laptop had eyeballs? And people get scared of it when you put eyeballs on it because it's a little too human. And so fast forward to iHealth Assist, the product line built out of this personality engine. We started building these personalities, digital personalities for retail and commercial. That's where the cash flow was going, and that's some of the easier targets where I'll call it targets marketing. How do you engage your customers? And so as I got fast forwarded into several installations of this digital personality. My wife was struck with breast cancer. She's fine. But within 12 months of that, I was struck with late stage colon cancer. And then 3 years after that, she was struck with a second bout of cancer. So what we're finding is as we got more and more into what can digital personalities do and what are they good at? And what they're good at is replacing the mundane and the repetitive. And now with the chat GPTs and the voice information we always talked about there, are the different technologies we talked about there in brief, we're now able to communicate at a human level. We're no longer having to teach people how to use technology. We're now able to teach technology how to communicate as humans. So you got those two things, and that's where this great coming together, as I say, is happening, where we now have the capability of taking the load off of our human staff, our HR staff, as you know, probably better than anybody, Dr. Meyer. You know, the amount of frontline worker stress and the amount of, and we do work in the UK too, and the amount of pressure that's put on our healthcare system right now, and the human capital of that healthcare system is overwhelming, and it's going to bring, if it hasn't already brought certain sectors of the world to its knees because of the overwhelming efforts that are needed there. So what we've done with iHealth Assist, which quite honestly is really, I wouldn't say just, but it's really a repurposing of this retail digital personality engine we created, into how can we make that serve as staff augmentation, staff replacement, staff augmentation. What if I was to go to you and say, hey, I can take, 3 of your PCPs and take 20% or 30% of their workload off of them, and that workload is the more repetitive, mundane process you have to get through, and then allow you to turn that focus onto your patient population and do things that you as humans, that you as primary care physicians and specialists can only do. And so the purpose is not to replace, the purpose is not just to save $1. The purpose is to give people back the ability to be more human. So there was a really interesting speech I did way back at InfoComm in 2019. And the title of my presentation was actually Being Human. And how, if people really stopped and opened up the curtain a little, AI and digitizing personalities to speak with patients and to speak with other healthcare professionals isn't taking our humanity away. It's actually giving it back to you, because our technology is now human. It communicates as human. You don't have to learn about technology. The technology can now learn about you. Our characters are multicultural. They can speak 140 languages. We actually have 2 members of the deaf community. We can even communicate with deaf patients directly.
Wow.
So there's a real opening up of the humanity of healthcare by utilizing AI in the right way. But that's kind of how we're at and where we're at in this healthcare journey that everybody's on. And why I have a personal passion to keep this iHealth Assist and product patient advocacy and HCP support advocacy going.
Incredible, Jack. First of all, I'm glad that you and your wife are okay. So that is first and foremost. And I do find that those of us in healthcare who gravitate towards innovation, I'll say, changing the way we do things, which, healthcare is just buried in the status quo in this country. Like, people are, I don't know why, honestly. So there's some of us, and I put myself in this category, it's hard earned, but who want to see things improve, need to embrace ideas like yours, because we've been doing the same thing over and over again, and clearly it's not working. In fact, it's getting worse. So I want to ask you about a tiny little thing. I just want your opinion about this, and I'm sort of maybe getting a consultation from you for free. But so I have just started dabbling with Chat GPT in my work, right? So, right now we have physical scribes. We have human being scribes that come into our exam rooms with us and do all of the documenting, and also talk to our patients at the end of the visit, kind of recapping the visit. And they serve as an extension of us. But like you said, they do the repetitive, like, I don't need to repeat the plan of care myself. I already went over it with the patient. So my scribe does that. So seeing a solution that would maybe enhance or replace the physical scribe, because frankly, sometimes patients are uncomfortable with another human being in the room, whereas maybe an avatar in the room might not be as uncomfortable. So I think that's one area where I could see, an AI solution really taking hold. Our big health systems, do they seem receptive to this idea of, plucking out some, not all, humans that don't necessarily need to be in those exam rooms or before those patients and substituting an avatar? Or do you feel like you're getting a lot of resistance because we believe in the status quo?
Yeah, the great questions. There's a lot to respond to, because that is at the core of a lot of we call it the why personas. Everybody goes, well, why do I need it? And
Right.
that's what kids do with their game, is that cute little characters, and that's what we do with our Facebook memes and create our little person emoticons and things like that. But the reality is, in the healthcare sector, I think doctors and healthcare practices and hospitals and anybody in the healthcare sector obviously follow a basis of outcomes, where they believe in outcomes. And there is a lot of resistance, just to answer your question more directly. And that's probably one thing that's probably baffled me a little more than I expected when I went into this journey, is why more people aren't seeing the benefits directly, and then at least giving it a shot and saying, hey, how can we make this work better for our patients and for our doctors? But going back to what I'm referring to on their own outcomes, is there actually is beginning, there's a number, I wouldn't call it a large volume of data of clinical trials, and at least some studies that have been done around that, but you keyed on a few things that I could probably highlight. And I'll try to dig up the references after the show, if any of the audience is interested, about some of the responses that humans have to avatars versus human interaction, all related around that trust factor you're referring to, and we have actually, Christine, done a lot in the clinical trial world with that very topic. And what we find overall is a couple of studies that are pretty intriguing. One of which that shows if it's too cartoony, if it's more robotic and stick figurey, we don't believe it. If it's a digital personality or a voice conversation only, we believe it, but we understand it's voice only and it's a Siri and it's only regurgitating the data it has behind it. And once you get to the emotional side of that trust, is where we kind of come into the mix, and our characters, like we did. We're doing a trial still ongoing. It's about 3 years old now with it's called the OVO trial. It's a trial can get what are the outcomes of babies born to opioid addicted mothers, and a lot of those are younger minority females that don't want to sit and talk to someone like me. I'm the cliche 57-year-old gray-haired white male. Nobody wants to
Right.
talk to me. So we created a series of avatars through our partnership with RTI Institute, where we had a young Hispanic female, slightly older than teenage, and we had another Black female. We had a couple of character personalities. They would speak Spanish, they would speak English, and then put those in front of the patients for targeting, for recruitment, and for digital consent. And the reception has been very, very, very positive.
Wow.
The clinical trials I was referring to, and I got a little diverted there, showing that this trust factor, when someone is speaking to a animated character that's too photorealistic, the whole Hollywood creep factor comes in, as I call it, the uncanny valley is the correct term for it. Where if it's too realistic, it tends to creep people out. We as humans are very attuned to gestures and slight movements, voice inflections. You and I are talking our heads, we're shaking our heads just a little bit, and that's a very natural movement for us. But for millions of years, we've learned how to communicate with a lot of our communication being gesture based, and that's really hard to recreate. So when you get a photorealistic character that's too human, but it's not acting quite right, it becomes creepy. It's kind of like the horror movie where the head turns a little farther than it needs to, or the joints are spinning a little backwards, and you go, "Ooh, that's just creepy." And so to stay away from that, the one thing I learned in the gaming space is how to create characters that are endearing, that are trusting, that are very relatable, very relatable. And the relatable thing is what makes them trustworthy. So a lot of our characters, when we do a clinical trial or we're dealing with a certain patient population, we really work with the patient experience teams in the clinical trial, CTAs and such, and design the characters to be very open and appealing to the demographic. So they're just real enough, a little bit past that Disney-esque cartoony, but not into the photorealistic world. And the reception's been very, very, very positive. And that clinical trial I was referring to, that I'll dig up the reference for if it's helpful, will even show that quantifiably, that when a person is interacting with a character that they relate to culturally and, through language, aesthetics, and gestures and mannerisms, that they trust that avatar more than the animated, more than the photorealistic CGI, and actually, in many cases, more than the human. And a lot of that is because of the judgmental quality, especially in clinical trial. I really like our plays into the clinical trial world, because I think if you can, start with the right demographic that's targeted, that your study's trying to target, and you're able to recruit, retain, and complete a trial, probably as well as I do, if not much, much better, the difficulty in recruitment for clinical trial, and the difficulty in keeping patients engaged through a multi-year clinical trial. The dropout rates are astronomical, and the cost and the outcomes are often jeopardized because of that. I think the number I remember was something astronomical, like 60 or 70% of all clinical trials don't meet their target demographic quantities or something like that. Those numbers are probably wrong, but let's say it was a lot higher than it should have been.
High.
So those are really some of the cool use cases that I think are going to come out of the healthcare organizations, that will open the box a little bit and think a little bit outside, and look at the AI as a productivity booster, not as a human capital replacement. And I think that's the mental shift we need in the industry.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think that you hit on so many things when you were talking about the opioid addicted young mothers and trying to get them to engage. My daughter is in medical school in New York City. And, one of the things that she had been tasked with was enrolling opioid addicted women who had just delivered babies into programs. And, she very clearly describes walking into these hospital rooms where this young, sometimes 17, 18-year-old girl just given birth, alone. And in comes, my white privileged, med student daughter with a clipboard, asking her a million questions. And she would roll over and look out the window. Like there was just no way they were going to connect on any level, even though, my daughter had the best intentions. It just was not a connection that was going to happen. So that is just exactly where I could see, AI being so tremendously helpful as a boost, as opposed to, a detractor. Do you find that in your own healthcare journey? So, obviously for me as someone who employs people and needs more staffing and needs more hands on deck, this is tremendously exciting. But having been a patient, can you think of a time where you were tasked to do your own legwork as a patient, where you were like, man, if only I had some support here, and maybe the doctors just didn't have the time or didn't have the personality? Like, did you experience that in your journey?
We did. I've been dealing in the healthcare sector, at least from a pharmaceutical side, for probably 20 years as well. So I had some, and we had probably done 15 or 20 clinical trials, probably a lot through UNC network, behavioral sciences group, and some other groups locally through RTI. So I had some exposure to clinical trials, and being the knowledge nerd I am, I had some of the government clinical trial sites, and I was able to read through a lot of clinical trials, and I probably talked to probably every TA on the clinical trials that were relevant to my condition. So I had a little bit of exposure and experience in that. Matter of fact, I was told at one time I was probably an oncologist's worst nightmare because probably had just recently thumbed up on every clinical trial I could. But getting back to the real relevance of the questions you're asking there, is yes, but it was ironic where I ended up landing. It wasn't as much about not having great HCPs around me that were willing to spend as much time as they could. I also found that even my desire to have more face time with the 2 or 3 oncologists I had, I went down to MD Anderson. I still go down every year.
Wow.
But those journeys that were going back and forth, and matter of fact, I just got back 3 weeks ago. My fifth clean slate. Yeah.
Yes.
But it resonated with me that the patient journey and the patient experience isn't just the point of care. It's what you go through outside of point of care.
Yes.
That's a burden and an overwhelming burden on friends and family. And so the one of the products that we push under iHealth Assist now is really just an AI concierge service for the hospitals and healthcare facilities. Just be able to get patients in. I mean, you know, down at in Houston, the campuses down there are just immense. You feel like you're walking in downtown New York and trying to find where you need to be on the 7th floor for your imaging, and you're trying to navigate through the hospital. And a lot of times I found myself either taking the wrong turn or not planning enough, or going, okay, I'm in the hospital now. Where do I need to go? And I just got backwards and along. There's always construction going on. And also I found myself, burdening the professionals going through the healthcare workers going through the halls and asking them questions and stopping them every once in a while. And I go, you know what? It's probably an easier way to get some of those questions answered. Where can I catch an Uber? How much is parking? I got a 2-hour stint between my blood work and my imaging. So where can I go get a hamburger while I'm waiting, or a couple, whatever. So a lot of the burden that's put on the staff in the healthcare system is around not the point of care and not the medical expertise. So this product we have now called our AI concierge is really a concierge service that we've done for retail for years. And we just educated it with the knowledge of how do you get around the hospital? How do I get from where I'm at to this? I want to answer some common questions. I need to get my prescription filled. Where do I go? Someone told me I needed an imaging. Oh, well, you need to be, someone told me I have an MRI. Well, you need to be in imaging. So just to help patients navigate the complexity of the healthcare system, we're finding is already improving patient satisfaction, taking some of the burden off the staff, and it's opening up a different vision for what AI can do. AIs don't have to always be the expert at, okay, I know AI, there's a lot of AI going on for some of you were saying for some of the dictation pieces you needed for documenting your case history. There's a lot going on in radiology on how we can do earlier detection for mammograms or diagnostic mammograms, things like that are going on. Those are big, complex problems. And to finish off on why we kind of chose that too, we're going, well, let's look at the walk before you run scenario. Before we sit down and try to educate and take the AI and try to make the AI a direct support mechanism for healthcare information, EHR records, things like that. There's a lot in there, privacies, the data access. The one problem I have personally, and it's not that it's not going to be resolved at some point, but people still also got to realize the generative AIs. You hear about ChatGPT being probably the one that comes to the tip of everybody's tongue when you talk about generative AI. It's really the amount of bias that's built into the data. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to put ChatGPT and point it to the New England Journal of Medicine, and all of a sudden you've got a diagnostics physician on your hands. That ain't going to happen. Right. That's going to just cause more problems than it helps. So that problem, I don't think, is addressable by an organization of our size, and even the large ones are going to take a long time before they get that right. And as we know in the healthcare system, close enough ain't good enough.
Right.
So the use cases we're focusing on are really more on the patient experiential side and things that will help that human journey, not really trying to take on the breadth of medical knowledge that you would really need to have to be an effective and a safe use of generative AI.
Yeah. So you touched on the patient experience bit, which is such a great area to maybe close on. So for us, for me as a business owner, I consider healthcare a hospitality industry. I consider patients customers. If my customers aren't happy, they're not coming back. They're leaving the terrible Google review and all those things. And sometimes we forget that. We think, listen, I'm providing excellent healthcare. That's enough, but it's definitely not enough. We have to provide all the other things. And it's hard and it's very time consuming. So, but we also know that when patients report excellent experiences, they also have better outcomes. They're in the hospital less. Their disease states are managed better. And that's just been proven over and over again. And in fact, now, for us in the US in primary care, much of our reimbursement is directly tied to the patient experience and how patients perceive their experience. And so we are jumping through all kinds of hoops within my practice to better the patient experience. And I think it's important and it needs to happen, but it is taking away from the time that we spend doing other things, because there's only so many hours in the day, and if my MA is reviewing somebody's medicine 7 different times because they're going to get asked about, did your provider review your medicine? Then the MA is not focusing on something else. So there's a huge need. And the other thing is within, those big institutions, like you mentioned, MD Anderson, in my area, we have the University of Pennsylvania, which is also, a tremendous tertiary care center. I have so many patients who have cancer, let's say, and I'll say to them, you will get excellent care at the University of Pennsylvania. It's 45 minutes from where my practice is. And patients will say, oh no, I can't deal with that hospital. It's so big. Parking is terrible. There's so many people. There's a big, reluctance to engage in a healthcare system like that because of how huge and unmanageable it seems. Enter AI concierge services like you're describing, where that overwhelming sense gets taken away. And it doesn't require a human being from my practice or a human being from Penn's system to do it. You all of a sudden open the world of better healthcare solutions to so many patients who have been nervous because of those very things. So let me ask you the impossible crystal ball question. How far away are we realistically, Tech? How soon could you see a true AI solution, either in a small practice like mine or in a huge healthcare system like the University of Pennsylvania? Are we talking years and years and years here?
I don't think so. I think the outside of a quantifiable date saying this is when it's going to happen, I think it's like a lot of technology, it's going to be a rollout. So the phased approach, like quite honestly, our AI is already in hospitals. We have a new proof of concept going in with the Princess Alexandria Trust outside of London. They have a little different challenge over there outside of the fact that their healthcare system isn't arranged as ours. It's a governmental single payer system, and they don't have the patient choice. But so we focus on slightly different challenges there. Like we're going through an early launch right now, and it should be, hopefully you'll get some news on it. It should be launched probably at the end of this quarter, Q4, or first of Q1 of 2024. But on that one, we're focusing on the language challenges that they have. Our avatar will meet them at the front door and say, welcome to Princess Alexandria. And if they speak Romanian or they speak Polish or they speak Italian or English, we train our characters or our sign language. We're doing British Sign Language for that unit, or for the deaf patients. And so you struck on a point that really is one of our, everybody, they're all businesses, but hopefully it's a business that does good. Well, one of the value propositions is centered around that patient advocacy, that patient experience. So we believe that this rollout with PAH will not only highlight the benefit to the healthcare staff directly, and even to the increased patient satisfaction, but really hope and believe that it will kind of be a flagship for what does that really mean for the patient journey, for the patient experience, and um, what's communication barriers have really meant to the healthcare system. And I'm going to tie it back to the clinical trial as well, because I believe it's the communication barrier that's at the core of what we're trying to tackle. And in the clinical trial world, we all know that the majority of participants that are actually active and finish participating in a clinical trial are your middle-aged white males still.
Yeah.
And so if you think about AI as not human replication, but human communication, I think breaking down and showing at Princess Alexandria Hospital that we've now been able to successfully be a patient advocate for the multicultural diversity that Europe has that we don't necessarily have as much in the U.S., bridging the deaf community, bridging the multiple languages, bridging the cultural differences outside of London. But I think that will start opening eyes to more of the clinical trial world, more of the individual HCPs. As far as when it's available, honestly, Dr. Mark, it's available now. We have been selling it. We've been not as quickly as we thought, and a lot of that goes all the way back to a comment you made in your very opening statements. What were so accurate, as I see it all the time. It's a little bewildering to me with the challenges we have in healthcare systems in the U.S. and Europe. I mean, we've even done one or two in Saudi Arabia and Netherlands. We have one up in the Netherlands. That there isn't more of an appetite for it. It's just a little surprising, quite honestly. I don't mean that in a condescending way, but it's a little surprising. And I think it's just like everything. It's a matter of education. So I guess to wrap that up into your question directly, it's not a question of when the technology is going to be ready. It's when the market, it's when the C-suites, when the CIOs, when the CTOs, when people start asking for it, and when the education is there and they go, oh, I've seen these positive use cases. Us in the healthcare system, everything has to have a quantifiable ROI on it or an outcomes, we're an outcomes-based community. So how do you get the outcomes unless someone takes
unless somebody tries it, right?
Yep. So it's really more of those proof points and the outcomes that we're lacking, not the technology.
Wow. Well, listen, your story and the work you're doing just has me so excited. I am in my 50s too. I've been in medicine a long, long time. I've been through all kinds of transitions that I didn't think I would survive. But at the core of what we do as healthcare providers is we love taking care of patients. And it's all of the other stuff. It's the noise from the outside that takes away from that. So enter you and the work you're doing with iHealth Assist, and all of a sudden I see some of that noise going away, and then a reset so that my focus becomes you, the patient. Again, I see, healthcare provider satisfaction going up. I see more young medical students going into fields that maybe they wouldn't have gone into before because they seem so daunting and overwhelming because of all of the noise. So, I feel like this is happening in my lifetime, which is so exciting. Maybe before I retire, even, we'll see some very significant use of AI in medicine and improve patient outcomes. So thank you. That's the biggest thing I want to say to you. Thank you for being in this space. Thank you for considering us, healthcare providers, and our challenges. I'm here for it. Everything. So if you ever want to run something by me and see, hey, would you buy into this? Yes, I most likely would. And then maybe that's how it starts, small grassroots, start at the core, the doctors, the healthcare providers doing the work. And then those big institutions will have the use cases that they're looking for to make the investments, Yep. All right. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work you're doing. For everyone listening, this is Chuck Rinker. All of his information is going to be in the show notes. Please check out the important work that he's doing. Chuck, if there's ever anything we can do on our end, I would be happy to hear from you. Thank you again for being here. For all of my listeners, you have just heard a really amazing episode of Tell Me More, Better Conversations in Healthcare. maybe one day our conversation is going to be happening through an avatar and it really will be better. I look forward to that day very much. If you've had a medical experience, a medical conversation that you want to talk about, please reach out to me, Christine at ChristineMeyerMD.com. Thank you all for being here.